Hey, it's Jim, and this is level 1 of the CFA program, the topic on corporate issuers, and the learning module on business models. The first paragraph of this reading defines business models. That has several components, of course, strategy and operations, target market, customers, suppliers, and then ultimately some kind of a financial profile, which would include measures of risk and performance. But the reading goes on to describe kind of the traditional historic business model for firms that are in, let's say, the manufacturing industry or the retail industry. But then, and I think this is an important component of this particular learning module, the reading emphasizes the last 2 or 3 decades worth of technological innovation and how these advancements have allowed for changes and dynamic changes inside of a business model. So I would be prepared on the exam to answer an historical business model question, but then be prepared to answer one that has some kind of innovation. Let me give you just a quick example. What do we know about a company like Johnson & Johnson? They've been around for a really, really long time. We know that Johnson & Johnson makes Johnson & Johnson baby shampoo and Listerine and a whole bunch of other skin stuff, right? And so that's pretty much their ultimate core business. But over the last, it's probably been 40 years by now, Johnson & Johnson has expanded into other fields. I mean, I have, not to get personal or anything, but I have a Johnson & Johnson titanium hip replacement. They do shoulders and knees and hips. Sooner or later, they're going to replace my brain, which might not be a bad idea. But then they have their pharmaceutical stuff, which are things like the vaccine, and they do cancer research and all kinds of stuff. So think about this, how Johnson & Johnson has evolved and how its business model has changed over the years to reflect these advances in technology. By the way, its Consumer Hygiene and Health Products division just had an IPO sometime in early 2023. I think the new company is called Kenvue or something like that. But you'll love this. Only 2 LOSs, key features and types of business models. Now, those of you who have recently watched one of the previous learning modules on capital structure, I think I kept you for, was it 80 minutes or 90 minutes or so? I promise that I'll give you a break on this one here. We don't need nearly that amount of time. We're not going to have to use our calculator at all to address these 2 LOSs. And in fact, as you can see this, you could probably combine these into just one LOS. So here's probably the first question on the exam. What are the following, what aspects can be identified as parts of a business model? Now, I just listed a couple of bullet points there in the very beginning, but what the reading emphasizes is who, why, where, how much, and how. And look down at the bottom, and we're going to have a slide for each one of those 5 points. But this is what the Institute is trying to get you to realize. Look at what we have bolded down there. It differs from its competitors. So this is this notion of technological innovation, which can be applied to each one of those 5 points. How can we differentiate our goods and services from our competition out there? Now look at the bottom diamond point there, the core elements. I want to go back to the Modigliani and Miller capital structure video that hopefully you guys just watched. What did M&M teach us in their little fantasy world? That the value of the firm is a function of the quality of its assets. What did I say? The quality, the ability of its assets to generate sustainable cash. Well, here in this business model, which could essentially have been written by maybe a management professor. And by the way, we will reference Michael Porter, who has a PhD in business economics from Harvard, and who I believe still has an endowed chair at Harvard. I mean, he's one of the leading professors in the history of professorships. I think I saw a quote somewhere that he has influenced more people in the business world than any other professor out there. My point is that Modigliani and Miller stuff and this management stuff focuses on, well, what do we have in bolded there? The core elements of the business. and then those interactions between and among not just these 5 points that are listed here, but those bullet points that I mentioned earlier. So let's start with these key features: target customers. We can identify our target audience by geography. We can identify them by market segment. We can identify them by customer type. We can identify them by however we want to, right? I mean, each individual industry might have different ways to identify special target customers. And then this is what Modigliani and Miller were telling us, right? What is the product or the service offered by the firm? What is the essential business? What is the core profitability? And then how can we differentiate? Take the simple example of Walmart and Target. If you walk into Walmart, you have one kind of a sense, one kind of a feeling. If you walk into Target, you have a different kind of a sense. I'm not saying that one is superior to the other, but they want to attract different kinds of customers, but they also offer different different products. Even though it seems like you could go and buy Johnson & Johnson shampoo at both Walmart and Target, but they have different ways of presenting them to the ultimate consumer. How about channels? You know, back when I was in college, which was a long time ago, we called this business logistics. Now it's called supply chain management. And so what we're interested in here is deciding, all right, where are we going to do this? You know, are we going to put our product line in Target? Are we going to put our product line on a street corner? Are we going to put our product line on a web page over there so nobody really has to go to that physical place? They can just do it with a click of a button. Or are we going to hire somebody to act as an intermediary? Two main functions here. This is probably a good exam question: sales and marketing, and there's that term logistics that I was mentioning just a moment ago. What we're doing is we're going to differentiate these functions. Some of them can be performed internally. Some of them can be performed externally. But let's go ahead and look at those three bolded points there. This is another good exam question: function, the assets, and the firms. How this all figures out in getting our product line out to wherever the ultimate goal is. Now, we can't leave this slide without looking at that bottom circle point. Going back to, remember now, we're trying to think like accountants and financial analysts and financial managers. So the impact of this supply chain and the channeling is going to affect the balance sheet. It's going to affect the income statement, in particular profitability. And what we need to do is make sure that each one of these accounts that show up on the income statement that are part of this supply chain can be responsive to both internal and external risk factors. I mean, here's the obvious example. I know we're years away from COVID now, but still, COVID, I mean, there's this huge external factor. Not too many people were worried about it back in 2018 and 2019, but I promise you, of course, you know this better than I do. Everybody is worried about it now. All right, how about types of channel strategies? So we can have a traditional strategy where we do something here inside of our factory, then we sell it to somebody else, and they might do something with it, but they might just house it, and they might have a big warehouse, and so different retailers can come in, and then those retailers then go put it on their shelves, and then somebody goes and buys it. This is a common strategy for things like Johnson & Johnson baby shampoo. Now, I got to put this in parentheses here. Amazon has pretty much changed this traditional channel strategy, because I can go buy Johnson & Johnson baby shampoo from Amazon. I could probably buy a truckload of concrete from Amazon. And who knows, I might even be able to buy a helicopter from Amazon. But the reading doesn't emphasize that stuff. Maybe in future iterations of this learning module. So forget about Amazon in this traditional channel strategy. But of course, now Amazon then comes with direct sales, sells directly to the end consumer. Now, what this typically is from the manufacturer directly to the end consumer, but it could be in this B2B, it could be in all sorts of different kinds of arrangements with different intermediaries. Once again, try to remove Amazon from your thought process here. How about if we combine both a physical and a digital method? That's called an omni-channel strategy. My wife and I, we do this regularly. We've done this multiple times with Best Buy, where we go ahead and order something and then we pick it up in a store. How about pricing details? All right, so we did the strategies, the channeling strategies, but then we need to layer that with, what kind of price, and let me go back here real quick. What kind of pricing is there in traditional or direct or these omni-channel strategies? How can we attract? Remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to obtain, we're trying to sell our good or service at the highest price possible. Consumers, they're trying to buy our good or service at the lowest price possible. So somewhere we have to meet in the middle. And in a traditional microeconomics kind of an environment, you meet in the middle and you decide on one price. And that price signals the rest of the marketplace and everyone's happy with that price. But of course, inside of this business model, there are going to be different pricing strategies. And it depends on, among other things, the type of business model that we are using. For example, if we're a branded product line, we might say something like, oh, you know what? We're going to charge this high price. In fact, my one son and I were watching a very famous tennis match the other day. And my son said, wow, look at those sneakers. Those things cost $700 or something. And I, of course, I don't know anything about this. I wouldn't know a $700 sneaker versus a $7 sneaker. So if you have this brand name, if you have this pricing power, then you can charge a premium. Or you can say, you know what, we're happy to take a discount. And then we might just say, you know what, we'll take whatever price we can get out there. So these are really good questions. Look at that first arrow, orange bullet point, premium, parity, or discount. Now, of course, as good executive leadership team, we need to justify that pricing structure. Now, remember, I'm going to link microeconomics LOS with what's going on here in pricing. If we have a perfectly competitive market, then we have to be price takers. But if there are pockets of ability to differentiate, remember that perfectly competitive market has a homogeneous product. In other words, it's just shampoo for babies. It's not Johnson's baby shampoo, no more tears. I remember when my guys were little, we used to slather up their head and the soap and shampoo would be running down their face and they wouldn't cry. Of course, when we did it with my daughter, she cried no matter what. Oh, please don't let my daughter watch this video. So what was I saying? Price takers, but we might be able to be a price maker if we have a branded product line. All right, so how are we going to do this? Types of pricing models. Pricing discrimination depends on the quality or the grade, the units sold, which kind of a distribution channel, customer size, customer type, unit cost. I can't help but think of Sam Walton and Walmart. I mean, he was famous for saying something like to Johnson & Johnson, he'll say, you know what? You typically sell a bottle of Johnson & Johnson baby shampoo for, I'll just make up a number, $1. Well, we're going to buy 1 trillion bottles of this. So we're only going to pay you 72 cents or something like that. That's why Walmart can afford to offer these falling prices as you go throughout the store. But remember now, Sam Walton was not doing this just because he wanted to sell his products at a low price to help out everybody. He wanted his consumers to come in and say, oh my gosh, I'm only paying this here, therefore I'm going to get more value out of this. But Sam Walton's the buy low and sell high was still similar or maybe even identical, maybe even superior to the competition. All right, we can have dynamic pricing based on pricing based on different times. And, there are lots of good examples. The reading mentions airline tickets, but I'm going to give you an even cooler example. I'm wondering how many of you live in bigger cities. And in bigger cities, they have different pricing for travel. So you can be driving down a main thoroughfare, a main highway in a big city, and it'll say something like, okay, the right 3 lanes you can drive for free. But if you want to get into the left lane, use your Easy Pass, and it's going to cost you $3 to drive the next 5 miles or something. So when there's lots of traffic here, and then people go and they use that lane, and they're willing to pay. Free travel versus pay travel. But there's a big sign up there. If traffic is flowing really, really quickly on the 3 lanes, then that price over here might be 5 cents or something. But when there's huge traffic, they could probably charge, $10 or $15 or $30. I always found it interesting that these municipalities would, hopefully they have some kind of a strategy for this dynamic pricing where they could charge the highest price, yet continue to have good demand. Tiered pricing, this is what I was talking about with Sam Walton. There can be auctions, there can be reverse auctions, there can be value-based pricing. Lots of times that value-based pricing is in the pricing of drugs. Now, I know the government has lots and lots to say about the pricing of drugs, but look, if I take this particular medicine and it is going to clear out my heart or clear out my arteries, then what I'm doing is I'm probably avoiding having to have a heart operation or a stroke or a coronary or something in the future. So the value that I get out of it is a peace of mind that I'm not going to have quadruple pass surgery sometime in the near or distant future. You guys know all about bundling. This is cable subscription, not only inside of the cable choices, and I'm completely unhappy with my cable choices. What I would love to do is I would love to pick maybe 10 channels and just pay for those 10 channels. I don't need all of these other channels. For me, what do I need? I need to be able to watch golf. I need to be able to watch Seinfeld. I need to be able to watch AMC so I can see Jaws and the Indiana Jones movies all the time. And I need to be able to watch Main Cabin Masters. That was only 4 shows, right? Or four networks. Nevertheless, my cable is bundled not only with my internet, but it's also bundled with my phone. And we still have a landline, even though I could give you my number, but I don't even know if that phone works. Add-on pricing, we want to get some extra services. This happens all the time when we take our Hondas into the dealer to get serviced. They'll say something like, oh, your fluid over here, that looks really, really dirty. You don't need it changed, but boy, it'd be really good if you had it changed. And then razor blade pricing. This is interesting. How many of us have spent $50 on a printer? And we use it for a while and the ink runs out and we go to the store and the ink costs $500. There's razor blade pricing. Penetration pricing. This is when a firm is going to say something like, you know what? Let's suppose it's me, Jim's baby shampoo. I know Johnson & Johnson is my big competitor, and I know that bottle costs, let's say, $2. So I'm going to bring in Jim's, what could I call it? Jim's hardly any tears. Not no more tears, but just almost no tears. And I'm only going to charge $1.40. And so I'm sacrificing margins to try to build up a customer base, build up scale, build up my balance sheet, build up my income statement. And so what we're doing is we're just saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and accept a loss today because sooner or later, if my product is good, people are going to know about it and it's going to become a brand name product line. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about freemium pricing. Everyone in my family will regularly say things like, on my phone, here's a free game. My wife plays Candy Crush. It's a free game. But every once in a while, I'll notice like a $1.99 charge on there for, kind of, what do they call it? A help, or we'll do this one for you, or whatever it is. Yeah. All right, how about creating value through alternatives to purchasing? So I want you to think about what this means on the balance sheet. We had good conversations on capital structure. We had good conversations on capital budgeting and these long-term assets. I think you might remember I used the example of Harley Davidson. They have these huge metal stamping machines, which they own. But we don't have to own these things. We can lease them. We can have some kind of subscription pricing. We can license this. We can franchise this. There's a big deal in our area these days because we only have 2 Chick-fil-A's in our city, and there's a huge demand for additional Chick-fil-A's because you go to Chick-fil-A and there are 1,000 cars in line. And apparently Chick-fil-A is very judicious in their granting of franchising. How about this value proposition of a firm? So what did I say earlier? I did all those questions, right? The who, what, and all those. So what we're doing here is that we're going to try to keep customers. Value proposition of a firm. Once we do all of those, answer all of those questions, we want our customers to prefer us. How do they do this? Well, look at those bullet points there. Service and support, sale process, features, pricing. That's why whenever we leave the Honda dealership, we always get an email saying, please go ahead and rate your experience here. And the dude who we deal with all the time, he always says, Jim, I would love it if you gave me all 10s in response to all the stuff that I have done for you. How about the capability of a firm? This is the notion that how this firm is structured. And what I mean by that is what does it look like on both the left and the right-hand side of the balance sheet? Link that over to the income statement in terms of things like, labor expense and technological expense. Do we have the skilled labor force? Do we have the technology to be able to deliver all the stuff that we've been talking about in the past? Now look down at the bottom. I think this is a really good question. Always remember, wherever we are in these key features, 1 through 6, don't forget about the business risks. One of the great questions at the end of this learning module is a question on the differences between a value chain and the supply chain. Make sure you know the difference. Here we have it written out for you in these arrow points. So the value chain is really just how a business model creates value through its systems and its processes. The supply chain, on the other hand, now remember, there's supply chain on this side and there's supply chain on this side. It's this sequence of internal and external processes involved in creating the process, creating those product lines. So the value chain is probably viewed especially as some kind of a link or a bridge between the value proposition and its profitability. So the value chain, 3 parts here. Key activities. So there are primary activities and there are support activities. And this goes back to Michael Porter, who I mentioned earlier, is a PhD in business economics, super influential. Porter's 5 factors. I think we did that in a different learning module. So you have these key activities, then you have value added, and then you have identifying the competitive advantage. This is pretty much what Michael Porter is known for in general. I mean, globally, he's written, 15 or 20 books and, has given speeches to lots and lots of really important people throughout the years. But competitive advantage, and this is essentially what we're talking about here throughout our business model discussion, which of course includes some measure of how we're going to generate not just profit. So let's go back to Modigliani and Miller. Let's go back to our conversation of goals of the business. So we want to generate profit. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And in evaluating profit, we can come up with a margin, we can come up with break-even points, we can come up with all sorts of metrics that are going to identify where we would be in terms of, let's say, the next quarter's profitability. But let's not forget how the next quarter's profitability impacts the operating cash flows and perhaps even the free cash flows over time. I remember I said earlier, types of business models. The beginning of this learning module discusses some of the traditional or conventional models. So there they are down the left-hand column. Go ahead and get out your phone, take a picture of this. This is probably one exam question. Make sure you differentiate and be able to identify types of customers, different products and services, the channel strategy, and the pricing strategy. So we talked about each of those 4 columns. Please know on the exam how they relate to each type of those conventional business model. Now, how do we model? How is this business model? What are the variations in this business model? Combinations of conventional models or industry-specific models or variations inside of the industry. I mean, this is very similar to what I was saying earlier about the difference between Walmart and Target, but it could be the difference between someone like Harley-Davidson manufacturing all of their motorcycles in one specific plant inside of one specific country and then selling them in another country or marketing them in another country, or outsourcing the marketing strategy and then have those people come inside of a country. Value-added sellers, these are service-intensive products like construction machinery and software. Licensing arrangements, the right to use the name of a celebrity. I got to pause here. You guys know I'm a big sports fan, so whenever I see a sports dude or woman on television, I always think to myself, you know what? They seem like nice people, and they're very talented. Of course, they're very talented, but what's going to happen if they do something that's not appropriate, and then they have to get stripped of their licensing arrangement? I mean, it doesn't happen most of the time, but every once in a while, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. All right, franchises, I said this earlier, so restaurants, retailers, auto dealerships. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. What about innovation? This is what I was saying about the Johnson & Johnson and how technology can innovate and expand the market, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say, all right, here's our target audience, but with this technological innovation, maybe we can expand it this way. Maybe we can expand it that way. Maybe we can expand it that way. Notice I did 3 dimensions there, which might mean like some other type of a customer who we never thought of, maybe a customer in a particular country that we never thought of, and then maybe a customer who has a different age that we typically market to. So look at what we have bolded there: new market entrants rather than established industry. And so there's a good example about the airline industry. In the last years or so, we have flown almost exclusively on Southwest Airlines. So what do we have to do? We got 24 hours in advance. We have to pick up our phone and hit a button. And it seems like we're always in the B group, no matter what button that we hit or how quickly that we hit it. And then you put your luggage on top, you store your laptop underneath. Well, we're told it's among the lowest prices, and it probably is. So there's the example of the airline industry. How about digital technology? Oh, wow. I mean, think about this. Used to be that you'd have to drive down to the Honda dealer and wait for somebody to come, and then you walk out and you get in a car and you drive it around, and then you drive another car around, and then you say, all right, I'll come back in a day or two, and then maybe you'll decide to buy a car. But now what can you do? I mean, you just go to the web page, you see the different cars that they have available, and then you can click on a tour. You can pretend like you're sitting in the car. That'll even take you out on a test drive just sitting in your living room. And so there are all different sorts of things. So what are these implications? This is probably the good exam question. Location doesn't matter. Outsourcing, marketing is easy. Yeah, powerful network effects, because if I buy a car online, well, I'm going to tell my friends, and my friends are going to say, you know what, Jim, you're smart. Let me try to do that. So here's another slide on this network effect. A couple of key metrics there: number of users and the growth rates of users. These can be one-sided or they can be multi-sided. I mean, those things make perfect sense. Here's some other good examples. Social media, which I know absolutely nothing about, nor do I want to know anything about any kinds of those things. Open source software is another example. Wikipedia. Here's an interesting thing. A lot of professors say to their students, look, whatever you do not use Wikipedia as a source. And probably that's because the knowledge aggregators, you're not quite sure who the knowledge people are, and they might be putting stuff on Wikipedia that may or may not be accurate. It may be opinionated. Now, Wikipedia, of course, they have their own way of ensuring that these things are fairly accurate. But here's my advice: go to Wikipedia and type in derivation of the Black-Scholes-Merton option pricing model, and you'll get something that was probably just cut and pasted from somewhere else, and it's probably pretty accurate. But for the individual who knows nothing about option pricing, they look at all of these derivations and they'll think, there's no way I know if that's correct or not. And that takes us through these 2 learning outcome statements. I promised you I'd get you through in a short time period. I think I did. I want you to go to the end of this learning module. Go ahead and work through those 5 questions. You won't need your calculator, and I don't think you'll need more than 10 or 12 minutes. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and good luck studying.